Hey there. I know that I am outrageously late today. Let's see, it's 6:42. I try to come on here officially at 5 p.m. I guess the tardiness speaks for itself, but my problem is that I work from home and I have to do a lot of phone work, and occasionally that spills over into the showtime. And this was a time where it spilled over majorly because I had to do an intuitive reading for someone. It was an emergency. She needed me, and I was glad to come through. But that's why you didn't see me earlier. And right now, I don't see any viewers, so I don't know if anyone's going to join or not. Hi, Andy. No, Andy, I was just explaining I had to work, and I this was the earliest I could get on here, and I don't know if I'm going to be on for very long today. Um, it's better than nothing. At least I'm honoring my commitment to each of you. Um, I'm Andy. How are you doing? No, Anastasia tonight. Hi, Sybil. Thank you for joining. No, Anastasia. I was going to wait until I had more people on here to make the announcement, but she just texted me a little while ago and said that she's not going to be able to do a live stream tonight. There's a lot going on right now. I don't know if you're a believer. Yes, she's back home. She's back home, or at least she's on her way back home. She might still be in transition, knowing the traffic. I was visiting some friends down in that area just about a month ago, and I know it took me, well, coming back, it was like 2 hours, but going down there was almost 3 hours. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining. Because, it coincided with Burning Man, which is the big festivity, whatever you want to call it, out in the middle of the desert. It's basically an excuse for several thousand people to get naked in the desert and do a lot of drugs and have a lot of sex and listen to a lot of rock music. And then they burn this giant man in effigy. I think that's why I got caught in the traffic going down there. And to compound matters, the air conditioner in my car started overheating my engine, and I had to turn off the air conditioner and roll down my windows and just, well, by the time I got to my friends, I was basically almost melted into a puddle like the Wicked Witch of the West. But anyway, did I get to see the cute kitty she was with? Well, she sent me some pictures. They're adorable, really adorable. I just have my Sasha. I don't know where she's gone off to. She'll probably make an appearance. But you guys are wonderful to come here and join me, considering how late I am today. As I don't know if you heard me, I do intuitive readings for people on the side, and it was a bit of an emergency. I had to take the case, and I worked with her, and I knew it was going to spill over into this time, but I was hoping you'd all would be understanding, and here I am. But I'm sorry, Anastasia's not going to do her show tonight because I need to catch up with her myself and hear all that she's been doing. But I can tell you, it's been happy and spiritual and joyous, and I don't know if I can announce this, but she's even considering possibly moving there. But I don't know. That's all up in the air, and that's for her to discuss, not me. Um, what was this, Sybil? I love your braid. Your braid? My braid? I wasn't aware I had a braid. Or you mean the beard? The beard. If this is what you're talking about, I fully intended to shave before the show, and then I got tied up, and I figured, well, I better just get on here in the state that I'm in. And look who came to join me. Sasha, the Siamese cat. Yeah. Look, Sasha. Show everybody your pretty blue eyes. Yeah. She's saying, I'm a star. I like to be the center of attention. Now put me down. Um, Saying, Jim, you came to join? Yeah, Jim, you heard correctly. No, Anastasia tonight. She sent me a text just a few minutes ago and asked me to tell everyone that she won't be on tonight, but she'll be on tomorrow. Subi, hi from the UK. Can't sleep. 246 here. I love the UK. I haven't been in a number of years, but I've made several trips. I've probably done United Kingdom from top to bottom. I haven't been to Ireland yet, or Wales, but I've done all of England. I've been up in Scotland. I was just thinking about it the other day. I was telling someone about it. We were in London. I was with a couple of friends. This was back, God knows, like 30 years ago. And we were going to rent a car. We were going to rent something cheap and crappy, like a Ford Fiesta. And they kept us waiting. And this woman came in and said, "Oh, I'm so dreadfully sorry, but that car has a puncture." So they had to give us, for the same price, a Mercedes. Well, that was a big deal to us kids at the time. A Mercedes. So we made a point of taking lots of pictures of the countryside and getting that Mercedes hood emblem in the pictures. And as I recall, when we were in Edinburgh, our hubcaps got stolen overnight. Our Mercedes hubcaps. But anyway, I'm so happy to have you join me. I just um, adore England, and I very much want to go back. I just recently upgraded my passport, renewed my passport. I let it expire during the pandemic lockdown over 5 years ago because none of us were thinking about traveling anywhere. I was thinking about traveling. I wanted to. I wanted to take another trip to Italy. Italy, and I ended up spending it sitting here on this very couch in this living room making phone calls to people instead. But I still may go. Whimsy and I, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, I've even talked about maybe doing a little trip together, combining it with business because she and I do 2 shows a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, on her channel, The Oracle of Whimsy. And she said, "Well, we should take a trip and maybe make some videos." And I have been wanting to go back to Italy. I don't foresee it right now because even if she could take care of the plane ticket for me and everything, I got to take care of a lot of the other expenses. I just can't do that right now. And I got too much going on in my life right now, but it's something on the back burner for the future. But definitely like to stop in England again. Um, let's see. Let me check some comments here. I'm already looking forward to seeing Anastasia tomorrow. Ford Fiesta. Yes, it was a Ford Fiesta. Remember those? A quick little drink here. I have been on the run all day today. I literally finished the session and set the laptop up and my light and just jumped right into this. So here we are. And yeah, Jim, I said I was coming home from seeing Mom earlier, and I got into the garage. I found I had a companion on the dashboard. It was a mouse going on a ride with me, and it looked at me when it looked at you and you got home. Oh, cute little mousey. I used to have a pet mouse in my college dormitory my freshman year, and you weren't allowed to have pets. But if you're a little tiny mouse in a cage, I could get away with that. He was really cute, little black and white spotted mouse. Named him Winston. And he got out of his cage, and we couldn't find him for like 3 weeks. But mice are destructive little creatures. Every morning, we'd find electrical cords chewed up. Uh, there was a poster on the wall that I don't know how the hell the mouse did this. The mouse managed to pull the poster down and rip it up into chew it up into bits. And also, I had a Boston Fern. The mouse, again, they're nocturnal little things. They must not sleep at night. But anyway, the next morning, found every frond of the plant just pulled out with dirt everywhere, all over the floor. And you know where I finally found that mouse? Inside a box of Ritz crackers. Literally opened up a box of crackers, and there was the mouse in there. And the box was, it wasn't sealed shut, but you close those flaps. I don't know how the mouse got in there. But anyway, that's where he was. That's where I found him. Um, I took him home for Thanksgiving break, and my mother freaked. She freaked. "You are not bringing that mouse in this house." I had to keep him out in the garage. Anyway, That's my mouse story. Um, yeah, Sybil, I've heard that story. People with Mercedes having a big problem with the hood ornaments being broken off and stolen. Cat Cat. What was it? Cat Cat. That's a great name. Hi, Chuck. You're doing great. Keep on doing what you're doing. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much for that. Um, a celeb name for me. I was watching Gorgo. Gorgo? The name is William Sylvester. Well, not a bad name. Uh, Jim was saying he saw a mouse at work last week. It ran and hid and it wasn't bothering anybody, so I just didn't have the heart to harm it. Well, that's like it was with little Winston the mouse. He was a cute little thing. He was very sweet. I remember his little wiggly pink nose, and it was just tiny, tiny, and he'd let me pet him. He was very nice, and it was just the perfect pet to smuggle into a dorm room. Because I know people who tried worse, like puppies and kittens, and they usually got caught doing that. What was this? Andy Sylvester was in 2001, A Space Odyssey too. Anyway, I think the mouse was a hitchhiker. Yeah, I think he did. Just hitched a ride on your car. Well, that's kind of sweet. What's going on with people? Anything interesting out there? Anything good for people? I was trying to think because I didn't, like many times, I didn't get to plan for a show because I just jumped into this and I was thinking, what can I talk about? And I thought, well, the other day would have been the 100th birthday of Buster Keaton. And I adore Buster Keaton. I've done some artwork. I have the actual art. I just didn't have time to dig it out. But on my iPad, I have this one portrait that I did of him in watercolor when he was elderly. And then I also did a portrait of him when he was young, very young. And this was around the time of 1925 when he was the #1 box office draw in the world. #1 box office draw. And then through a series of misfortunes, he lost all that. It was like a perfect storm. Sound came in, and he did sound movies for many, many years, but a lot of silent performers, especially comedians, the magic was lost. What they did was so perfect for the silent medium, and it just did not quite gel. It didn't quite transfer over. So it was a combination of sound happening. Buster had signed a contract with Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and this was around 1928. And Buster had always been his own boss. He always had creative control, 100% creative control over his pictures. And suddenly MGM just wanted to take all that away from him. They felt like they knew what was best for him. And Buster felt like he was in a straitjacket and he couldn't do the comedy that worked for him anymore. And then his wife divorced him and cleaned him out, took the home, most of his money. It was a very, very bad divorce. And the combination of elements, Buster's drinking started accelerating. And by the early 30s, he was a terrible alcoholic. I should say a terrible alcoholic. He was a victim of alcoholism. And by the 1940s, this man who had once been the #1 box office draw in the world was now working as a $300 a week gag writer for Red Skelton at MGM. I mean, it was quite a fall for him. And he befriended this actress on the lot who had also signed with Metro Goldwyn Mayer. And she had been given the great big star buildup. Her career had been progressing at RKO, bigger and bigger, until where she was signed with MGM, and they were going to star her in musicals, and they were going to reinvent her into the next big thing. And it just didn't click. It didn't happen. And she found herself doing supporting roles. And that woman was Lucille Ball. And many times they would report to work at MGM and there wasn't anything for them to do. MGM just didn't, frankly, know what to do with them. So she and Buster formed a quick friendship. And Buster was one of the first to really recognize her genius. A great comedic genius himself. He saw her comedic genius and he started teaching her everything he knew about comedy. Everything. Taught her how to work with props, timing. And when you watch I Love Lucy, and if you're familiar with Buster Keaton, you will see a lot of Buster's influence on Lucy. I never understood why she never had Buster as a guest star on I Love Lucy, because they had a friendship. There are lots of home movies at her home with Desi in the 40s where Buster would be a guest, and you can see them playing around by the pool. There's some wonderful footage of them when Lucy was having a costume party. You saw the love between them. So I never understood why he never guest starred on the show. I mean, she had Harpo Marx most famously. Why couldn't she have had Buster Keaton? And there's even a picture of Buster Keaton visiting the set with Lucy and Desi. And when Lucy and Desi were initially turned down by CBS, they wanted Lucy. They wanted to take her radio show and turn it into a series. What they did not want was this Cuban playing her husband. They wanted some all-American, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, conventional husband type. And Lucy said, no, I'm not doing the show unless I can do it with Desi. And the main reason she wanted to do it in the first place was to save her marriage. Desi was always on the road with his band. She was working on movies. There were times where they wouldn't see each other for months, or if they would see each other, if Desi was in Hollywood doing nightclubs, there's a famous story of where they would meet at Coldwater Canyon. He'd be coming home from the nightclubs like 4:30 in the morning, and she'd be on her way to work at MGM, because actresses had to report very early in the morning for hair and makeup. So at 4:30 in the morning, they'd see each other for a few minutes, Coldwater Canyon. And they were tired of that. And they very much wanted to start a family. They knew they had to be in one spot. As Lucy even jokingly said on a talk show, you can't have babies over the phone. Trust me, it doesn't work. So they got the idea of the television series. And they didn't know it was going to be a success or anything. They said they thought maybe I Love Lucy would last a year at the most. And they'd have the films to show their kids as home movies. That they were very modest about it. They didn't know the show was going to be playing 75 years later to over 3 billion people in 78 countries. And they were going to become legendary. They didn't know any of that. But anyway, CBS rejected them. And so they decided they were going to prove to America that America would accept them as a married couple. So they went on the road and did an act together, like a vaudeville act. And one of the people who helped them that was if you remember, Pepito, the Spanish clown, who was on an episode of I Love Lucy. He helped, but so did Buster Keaton. But the story is Buster Keaton and Lucy and Desi holed up together in this the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego for 2 weeks and just rehearsed the whole show. And Buster had a big, big influence on it, especially a lot of the props. And I think you really see it because they took a lot of that vaudeville act and incorporated it into I Love Lucy episodes, split it up. The one where Lucy is the professor with the cello, and that bit where, the seal horns and Desi's throwing her fish and Lucy's going, all of that was Buster Keaton's creation. And they toured the country. They were a massive success. Every city they went, rave reviews. The audiences adored Lucy and Desi. And so they came back to CBS and said, look at these reviews. Look at this response. And CBS had to agree. And that's how Desi Arnaz got to play the husband on the show. But Buster had his hand in that. And they never worked together. Other, on camera, except, and it's on YouTube. It's about a 5-minute sequence. And in 1965, there was a, a special, a tribute to Stan Laurel, who had just passed away. Dick Van Dyke hosted it, and Lucy and Buster do a silent movie routine, and it's just adorable. It's adorable, and to watch those two giants of comedy working together the one and only time, I love it. And I remember seeing a photograph taken of them, because it was videotaped. So they were, Lucy and Buster and some of the other people were sitting in folding chairs around the monitor watching it. And Lucy being serious, she was watching, but Buster, because Buster famously never smiled on camera. There is a picture of Buster laughing uproariously at the two of them. It's one of the few times I've ever seen Buster Keaton laughing. But check it out on YouTube. Just type in Buster Keaton, Lucille Ball. Or I don't know if you'd have to put in Stan Laurel, but it will come up. And even Harvey Korman is in it. Harvey Korman plays the requisite Keystone Cop. Hey, it is a silent movie. Let's see, Andy said you have a question here. And how close do you live to any of those studios, and do they give tours? Well, all the studios give tours. That's pretty easy. You can book tours. But remember, they're spread out all over the place. So let me see. Paramount is maybe, and this is all contingent on traffic. You live in LA, it's not miles, it's minutes, it's traffic. If traffic cooperates, I think I'm roughly 15 minutes from Paramount Studios. And interestingly enough, the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where people like Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, Rudolph Valentino, it's where they're interred. That's right behind Paramount Studios on Melrose. So I'm close to that. The studio I'm closest to, I can actually walk to it. Maybe 10-minute walk away. It's the Prospect Studios. And that's where they do General Hospital and Grey's Anatomy. And I forget what else is done from there, but those are the two biggest shows I can think of that are done from that studio. That's here in my neighborhood. Let's see. Universal Studios is over the hill from me. Takes maybe 20 minutes, half an hour to get there. Universal, I'm trying. Warner Brothers is about the same distance going in another direction. That's over in Burbank. And let's see, the one that's furthest from me is, it's now called Sony Pictures, Sony Columbia, but it used to be the MGM Studios in Culver City. And I think that's about a 45 minute drive from me. But I've been to all the studios one time or another, and it's fun. Not entirely the same as it was in the great days of the old Hollywood, but there's still parts that still stand. Like when I was over in Sony Columbia, formerly MGM, I got to go on the soundstage where the Munchkin City was for the Wizard of Oz, and they showed us the trap door, where the witch comes up and makes her appearance, and there's the big burst of fire. That trap door is still there in the soundstage. And they said to this day, it's one of the largest sound stages in all of Los Angeles, if not even in the world. I forget what has been shot there, but I was just excited to be there where the Wizard of Oz was filmed. I'm sure you know that story about Margaret Hamilton. As she was, there was like a little elevator, and it would bring her up, bring her down. But as she came up, everything was fine. They filmed the scene, but it was when she was being lowered. And you remember that big fireball? She got badly burned, seriously burned. She was left with 3rd-degree burns. And she had all that green copper-based makeup on. And the makeup man was horrified. He grabbed her by the arm and just took her off immediately and said, Maggie, everybody called her Maggie. He said, Maggie, I am so so sorry I've got to do this to you, but we have got to get this makeup off. He said, this is going to be painful. This is going to be painful, but we got to get it off or you're going to be poisoned by that copper. And also it'll leave scars on you. So he handed her a dish rag and told her to bite down on it. He said, just bite on the towel. And he had to take alcohol and her burned skin, take alcohol and get the makeup off. And poor Margaret Hamilton had tears running out her face and she was in such agony. And he kept apologizing to her. She's told this story in interviews. Said, the makeup man, Maggie, I'm sorry. I have to do this to you. And they had to get the makeup off of her. And Margaret Hamilton said the studio did not even offer to drive her home. She had to drive herself home and she had to get herself to a doctor. And she didn't work for almost 5 weeks while she healed. And she said she was scared to death to sue because she knew if she sued the studio, she'd get blacklisted and probably never work again. Sorry, that's the way this industry tends to work. So she had to just kind of suck it up and come back to work. But I know there was one moment later when they were filming of the movie and there was some other fire or something. It was when she was on her broomstick and there was some effect. I think it was during the Surrender Dorothy sequence and they had to film her on the broomstick flying and they wanted some flames or something to come out. And she said, no way. No, I will not do that. And she held her ground to it. And I also tell this, she and Judy Garland had a close, nurturing relationship making that movie. They were almost like mother and daughter. So it's kind of ironic when you watch it and see them being such adversaries. I better get back to my comments here. Now, hadn't I? I was answering the question about how close I am to the studios. I always loved going to the movie studios. I've even worked a few times. I'm trying to think what studios I've worked on, but one that comes to mind, it was the old Warner Brothers. I think they called it the Ranch at the time. And at one time it was Screen Gems. And it's not far from the Warner Brothers lot. And unfortunately, a lot of these facades have been torn down in just the last year or two. I know there was a great fight to save them. But I was working on a pilot for HBO. It never saw the light of day. And this was many, many years ago. But during my break, I walked around the area and I saw the house for Bewitched. And I saw the house that was used for I Dream of Jeannie. And I saw where they filmed Hazel and the Partridge Family. All these facades were still up, including the courtyard, the fountain. The Friends, the opening credits for, where there's the fountain and they're splashing around it and everything. Well, that fountain was there in the courtyard area. All those were facades, but that's where they filmed that. And when they started tearing a lot of that down, they moved that fountain over to the Warner Brothers lot. I know because I saw it there and the tour guide pointed it out. But I know there was a big push to try to save some of those houses, especially the house from Bewitched. Oh, people fought. People had petitions. I think there were people threatening to throw themselves in front of the bulldozers, but nothing worked. It was destroyed. And what really makes it sad is there were people who were willing to put up the money to buy the facades and have them move to another location. And Warner Brothers said, no, I don't understand that. I don't understand it. They could have been saved, but that was one of my most fun times of being on a backlot of a studio. And I was also working on something at the time. And also the great Harold Ramis was the director of the pilot. And he was such a sweet man. You may know Harold Ramis, probably most famously for Ghostbusters. He was a sweet man. And when we were all on our lunch break outside, sitting on our picnic tables, craft service, he insisted on sitting with us. Just being a regular guy, he just wanted to sit with us and talk. That's who he was. Oh yeah, or I've seen in movies they have buses where they have tours of celebrities' homes. Oh, of course that's for real. Oh my gosh, yes. There are all kinds of. You can go into downtown Hollywood and find booths and places where they, even people standing on corners selling tickets for that type of thing, tour buses that go around to the movie stars' homes and sites and things. And there's also one, I don't know if it's still around. I'm pretty sure it is. But there was somebody had an old 1950s hearse, funeral hearse, and he would book enough people to fill up the hearse and then drive around to some of the creepier things in Hollywood, like this is where this person died, this is where this person overdosed on drugs, this is where this person was murdered. But it was kind of the darker, seamier side of Hollywood, and I think that's still around. I think it's called Graveline Tours. Not sure, but yes, it's very much a real thing. Jim, I just looked it up. The movie was 1928 Steamboat Bill Jr. I'm not sure in what reference you mean to that, because it was actually a movie he made for MGM called I think it was called The Cameraman. That was where MGM started taking its control away. Steamboat Bill Jr., Buster Keaton still had total 100% creative control behind that. I think that movie might have been earlier than 28. I think it was more like 26, but I could be wrong. But the Cameraman was 1928, and that was a successful film because Buster was still riding on the wave. He was still a big box office draw, but audiences started sensing something was wrong. I don't know. It may have been the advent of sound, but it was also, it wasn't the same. He had his hands tied behind his back. He couldn't be Buster Keaton anymore. Audiences knew that. But yeah, oh yeah, of course, Steamboat Bill was definitely a silent movie. Just as Cameraman was a silent movie. I think Buster made his sound debut the next year. And I'm trying to think, is Days of Our Lives Paramount? Because I know Paramount Plus picked up the show, so I can watch it. Days of Our Lives. I don't know. I know they used to do Days of Our Lives in Burbank at the NBC studios, same place where they used to do Johnny Carson and Jay Leno to the Tonight Show. And they used to do it there. So it seems like it would make more sense that that would be on Peacock instead of Paramount, because that's an NBC show, unless they sold it to Paramount Plus. I don't know. I know of Days of Our Lives, but I don't really watch it. My soap opera days are over. I've told the story of the one and only soap opera I ever got addicted to was Search for Tomorrow. Yeah, I'm dating myself there, but that was because of my mother. My mother watched so many soaps, and I probably even ridiculed her a bit for it. But Search for Tomorrow always came on at 12:30 in the afternoon during lunchtime. And my mom would make me lunch, and the kitchen TV would be on. And the way those soaps are, you watch a few minutes, they suck you into the vortex. And I got caught up in Search for Tomorrow. And I would watch it when I'd come home, when I'd be off from school, like Christmas, Thanksgiving breaks and things. And then when I went off to college, because my schedule was a lot more open, I could really watch Search for Tomorrow in my dorm room. And it worked out great for the first year. Until the second year, I was with I've told this before, my guidance counselor, was planning on my classes for the coming year. And there was this one class that was 12:30 in the afternoon. And I was trying to switch it around. And he said, this is an important class. You really have to take this class. And this is the only time it's available. The only time? You sure there's not a second one, another class? No, we have to take. What's the problem? How come you can't take this class? I couldn't tell him the truth, that it conflicted with Search for Tomorrow. It conflicted with my soap opera. And this was before VCRs and DVRs and streaming. It's like, you didn't watch it when it aired, you missed it. So I had to bite the bullet for one semester. I couldn't watch Search for Tomorrow because of my damn class, but I can admit it now. I didn't want to admit it at the time. Liv says, Whimsy, loved your. Oh, Sybil, loved your story of visiting the graveyard with Whimsy. Oh, yes. Yes. I forgot about that. Oh, it was when Whimsy was out here. I think it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And she wanted to do a lot of live segments. And she was fascinated with the idea of going out to Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll go along with it. You know, she wanted me to take her to Judy Garland's grave and some similar celebrity final resting places. And we went into the hallway of one of the mausoleums, and the lights started flickering off and on, off and on. And we have all this on camera. It got really weird and creepy. And then weird things started happening. Whimsy had a bag. It had camera equipment in there, expensive camera equipment. And it also had, pardon me, please, I scratch my nose. It also had her passport in there. And she was going to Europe in a couple of weeks. Had a big trip planned, and her passport was in there, and it vanished. We looked everywhere. We tore my car apart looking for it. We looked through the trash cans. We looked under chairs. It gone, just vanished into thin air. And I don't have to tell you, we were both just hysterical. Whimsy was so upset, and understandably so. And we both agreed maybe it wasn't a good idea going to that cemetery. We thought we were okay. We came in peace, and we said our little prayers of protection and everything, but we must have pissed off somebody who didn't want us there, and we paid the price for it. And so anyway, that was our little cemetery story. Normally I'm not creeped out by cemeteries because, I've said this before. I see cemeteries as celebrations of life. I look at gravestones, markers, and I just think these are people. They came here and they touched the world. They had children. They made their mark. To me, it's not gruesome. It's something to celebrate. And that was the attitude I came in when Whimsy and I went there, but something didn't like it. Let's see. Where's some other comments here? The Munchkin soundstage. Yeah, Jim, that was amazing to be there, especially with my love of old Hollywood history. Highly recommend coming out to LA and taking some of these tours if you love the movies. Oh, Joyce, hi. Thank you for joining. Speaking of General Hospital, yeah, that's right, Sydney. I told that earlier in the show that the sound stages where they shoot General Hospital are about a 10-minute walk from where I live. And I was once upon a time on General Hospital. Yes, back in 2001. I was a little bit part. It was a 2-day part. It took 2 days to shoot. And I got to, it was more fun just to be on the sound stages because the way they shoot a soap like that, they have an enormous soundstage and they have all the sets built side by side, just going down the whole length of the soundstage. And then on the other side of the soundstage, they have another set of sound stages just running down the line. I mean, it's quite amazing to see. I wish I had counted how many sound stages there were altogether, but some of them were big. Like there was the one that I had to be on was a courtroom set. That was a surprisingly big sound stage. And I remember they gave me my own dressing room with my name on the door. Now, granted, it was a piece of computer printed paper taped to the door, but I had my name on the door and I had my own dressing room. And that was fun. That was quite an experience. And I've told this story also that we recorded it, and I think it was like 2 weeks later or so it aired. And It played on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, it got preempted by George W. Bush giving a press conference. My mother on the East Coast was furious. She was so upset. Here, this woman who lived for soap operas was finally going to just get to see her little boy on a soap opera. And George W. Bush preempted it. And it was like a minute or two before my scene came up. It came up and she got to see it and all. But yeah, that was my little story there. Yeah, Jim, I think the cemeteries are a lot of fun to visit because you can see where a lot of the big stars were laid to rest. Westwood is fun. That's where Marilyn Monroe is interred. I was just telling somebody the other day because the 70th anniversary of the passing of James Dean was this weekend, September 30th. And I spent some time in Fairmount, Indiana, his hometown, because my artwork is there. I designed a large lighted sign with his image and some original paintings for the Rebel Lodge. And I also said that I got to spend time with his first cousin, Marcus Winslow Jr., first cousin, but they were raised together like brothers under the same roof. And Marcus still lives in the farmhouse that he and Jimmy grew up in. And I say Jimmy. Nobody in Fairmount refers to him as James Dean, including Marcus. I asked Marcus, I said, was he James or Jimmy? He said, Jimmy. We all called him Jimmy. So that laid that to rest. But I have pictures of myself and video at James Dean's gravesite. And I used to think, what a shame he wasn't buried out here in Hollywood. But when I was in Fairmount, I love Fairmount. It's a charming little town. And when I saw the farmhouse, and the cemetery is very close to the farmhouse where he grew up. It's down a little country road. And I realized when I was there that Jimmy Dean is buried exactly where he should have been buried. That's where he belonged, coming back home. And it's funny. I have the video of it. The very first time I went to his grave was 2 nights before Halloween. And it was 10:30 at night. It's not like here in LA where they have security guards and security cameras and everything is locked up at 5 p.m. This is a little tiny country town, Fairmount, Indiana. So no security or anything. You can go to that cemetery anytime you damn well want. Probably why his tombstone has been stolen 3 times, because it's just too easy to go there at night. Nobody's around. Well, anyway, my very first visit, 10:30 at night, pitch black except for car headlights on me. The wind is howling. It's 2 nights before Halloween, and there I am, pitch black in a cemetery alone. And I'm there with James Dean's tombstone, his headstone. That was my first visit, but I wasn't creeped out. Not at all. I felt very safe and secure, and it was lovely after all those years. I always knew one day I was going to go to his grave, and I made it. I better check back on some comments here. Let's see. Well, I always had an obsession with taking black and white photographs of cemeteries around the world. I love black and white photography also, Sybil. I haven't done it so much lately, especially in the digital era, but I used to have. I was an art major in college, and I took photography, a lot of photography, and I used to have my beloved 35 millimeter Canon AE1 single lens reflex camera, and almost all the pictures I ever took were black and white. And I used to do my own developing. I developed my film. I did my darkroom work. And I fell in love with black and white photography. And anybody who's ever done darkroom work knows that it's such a craft. It's such an art. You're not just like printing a picture. You're actually, you've got your enlarger and your photographic paper and your negative, and you're taking your hands in like this area, you need to bring it up a little. This area, you need to darken a little. I was always fascinated with that. What an art and a craft it is. And so beautiful. And then doing that and then having my print and then putting it in the different chemical baths. And you do it, put it in one tray and then another tray and another tray, and then you rinse them out in the sink and you hang them up in the dark room, and all you have is the infrared light. And then it would be, once it had dried enough, you could take it outside out of the dark room and look at it and see what you'd achieved. And I have some of my black and white prints still on my wall to this day, because I feel like I really made those pictures, from start to finish. I took the picture, I developed the film, and then I did the darkroom work and printed it out. And it really feels like my own. And you never get that satisfaction from digital now. And of course, now I'm like everybody else, take most of my pictures on my phone. And, and there's all these tricks, you can hit buttons now and enhance the picture and bring it up and bring it down and stuff. And yes, it's lovely to be able to do that, but I miss the analog craft of printing pictures. So, Sybil, in short, I share in your passion for black and white photography. In fact, my very first trip to Europe in the 80s, I only brought black and white film with me. And now to this day, when I show black and white, all these black and white pictures of Europe, people are like, well, didn't they have color film then? Yes, not that old. I chose to shoot in black and white, but I have some lovely pictures of Europe. I like that idea of going to cemeteries in black and white. It's at KGSU, Rick Springfield and Richard Simmons all starred on General Hospital. Well, that's pushing it to say I starred on there, but I was on. For 2 days many years ago. And Renee, hi, thank you for joining. Forgive me if I'm missing names here. Let's see. Everybody sing hello to each other. Andy, I mentioned downtown Burbank. Is that where Laugh-In was filmed? Yes, as a matter of fact, it is. It's the same studio where they did the Tonight Show and Days of Our Lives. So a number of productions were done at NBC Studios. And of course, they really milked that beautiful downtown Burbank, because at the time, Burbank was a pretty ugly little community. It's come up. It's just like in the former MGM. Culver City has been beautified quite a bit over the years, but it used to, and I know this when I used to go back there in the 80s, Culver City used to be one of the ugliest little towns you've ever been to in your life. And certainly during the great heyday of MGM in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were people who would go to MGM and be shocked to see how ugly it was, because this is where all those movies like Meet Me in St. Louis and An American in Paris and The Wizard of Oz and all those beautiful, beautiful musicals and Glamour and Garbo and Joan Crawford. Well, that was just part of the fantasy of the movie studios, how they could create all that. Let's see. I've told you I have this problem when I try to scroll in here, it jumps up, so I've got to find my place again. Let's see. What, Jimmy Olsen? Have you talked to Superman lately? I don't know if you mean me or whoever, or you mean Jim. I'm curious. Is that where the pickup line goes about going to a dark room to see what develops? It's probably where it came from. Let's see. Where's some other comments here? Oh, Sybil, you were an interior designer and fine art photographer. Fascinating. Timeless. My joke was, I see the light in the dark room. I like that. But you know what I'm talking about. I bet you loved it just like I did. And how exciting to be an interior designer, fine arts. I was an art major in college, and one of the things I loved was Virginia Commonwealth University. And I think to this day, it's still considered one of the best schools of the arts in the country. But one of the things I loved about it, my emphasis was more graphic design, commercial art, though my first year of college, we had to take something called Art Foundation, where it was art history and painting and drawing and sculpting, a lot of experimentation. And I have to say, subsequently, that was my favorite year of college. And I wish the other 3 had been more like that because it got a lot more restricted. But I loved going to the School of the Arts because it was painting and printmaking. It was sculpture. We had a fashion design department, interior design. And then, of course, we had our theater department, and we had music, and then there were the writers, and I was in heaven. I was in heaven because, I went to a little town school out in the country, and most of us who were artists were just not understood. We were looked upon like we were combinations of freaks of nature versus somebody from another planet. And when I went off to college and I was 18, I was I was with my fellow freaks. you know, I had people who finally understood me and I understood them, and many of us would compare stories of our childhood and our teenage years, and now nobody understood us. Well, now we were understood. And it was such an environment to be in for 4 years, and so much so I was heartbroken when I graduated college. It was really hard to leave that behind. But Sydney, yes, photography is definitely an art. And one of the reasons they liked for us to work with black and white film was because black and white is more about just forms and shapes and designs, as opposed to getting reliant on color. It's much more basic. And I found that helped me a lot with my illustration work. It was a good foundation for me. Joyce, I always wanted to learn how to do that. Chuck, oh, if you were here, Joyce, I'd teach you. We used to have things here called community dark rooms, where you could rent time by the hour, and they'd have, the chemical bath trays set out and the enlargers and everything. And there was one in San Diego I used to go to a lot, but now with everything digital, I don't even know if those things exist anymore. But it's definitely worth learning. But Joyce, I'd teach you if there was a way. Oh, Renee, you're doing fall cleaning? Well, I've been doing it too. I've been doing it as well. It's something we all, well, I don't want to say we all, because I know there are plenty of people who are extremely organized and together. I'm not one of those people. So every year or two, I need to just literally and figuratively clean house, like go through the closets, like start pulling stuff out, emptying out drawers. Like, do I really need this? Why am I holding on to that? Sorting through papers, sorting through old mail. That's what I did all day yesterday. And it did leave me kind of feeling wiped out today, but it's good. Even though my place is sort of a mess right now. Yes. Sasha, the Siamese, concurs that it's a mess right now because she's having to live in it. But I liken it to chipping away at marble. You're making your beautiful sculpture. I think it was Michelangelo who said, I'm releasing angels from these blocks of marble. So you're chipping away at it. And yes, and you got rocks everywhere, and you got dust and dirt, and it's a mess, and you're hauling it away. But bit by bit, you're creating your masterpiece. You're making your art. I'm going to have this place together. Yes, the camera angle you're seeing right now is just that, a camera angle. If I were to flip this around, oh, you'd scream in horror, all the stuff I have all over the floor here and stuff. But it's a work in progress. I'm releasing angels from my block of marble. In fact, Joyce, I saw something about this Aries full moon we're having right now. That's part of the theme of this full moon. Maybe you can correct me on this, but I think it was about organizing our lives, cutting out the BS, getting to the truth, getting to the basics. But I saw something about organizing. I thought, well, I'm being compelled to do that. Let's see here. Let me find my comments. It jumped. Let's see. Check. I see 2 celebrities' sons died. Robert Mitchum's son and Ike and Tina Turner's son. Yes, you're right. I did see that. I did see that. And there are people who believe that deaths come in threes. So let's be on the lookout. I'm sure there are some celebrity sons who are maybe a little nervous right now. Um, I shouldn't be making light of that. I don't mean to. Sydney, interior design is a hobby for me. It would be cool to actually do it professionally. Hopefully you can do that. I know, like any of the arts, it can be a bit competitive because I've known people who know at least two people who tried to be professional interior decorators, and they found, while they got a few commissions here and there, it wasn't something where they could make an actual living doing it. And there certainly are people who do make a very good living, but it's just like any of the arts. I know that from my own pursuit of my artwork, my painting, my illustration, and so forth. Occasionally, I get very lucky, but it's not enough to count on to live on. Like I did really well, like when I did the artwork for James Dean's hometown. Also, when I did the paintings of the Ball family for Lucille Ball's childhood home in Celeron, New York, I got paid quite generously for that. And that was, honestly, I would have done that project for free, but I didn't want to say that. But I did get compensated, and it was a particular year where I really needed the money because I had gone through a lean period of trying to support myself with my art, and I have just learned, let go of that one. Just art is great as a supplemental income, but no, I learned better. Can't count on it. What was this? So, Chuck, I just have a question. You said you met or knew around 500 celebs. I was wondering, did you ever go to their funerals? Because I was wondering if you got those pamphlets. I was only invited once to a funeral, and I was not able to attend because I had to work that day. But it was David Groh, who used to play Joe on Rhoda, the Rhoda TV series. He played her husband. I got to know him fairly well, and I got to be really close with his wife, Kristen, and she invited me to his funeral, and I wish I could have gone because I understand Valerie Harper gave a eulogy that was deeply, deeply moving. But no, that was my one chance to go to a funeral of a celebrity. He was a great man. I loved Christian and David very much. And David had kidney cancer. He died too soon. Sybil, yes, I've found my tribe. Or whatever you call them, like you get when you go to funerals. I haven't been to too many funerals in my life, oddly enough. In fact, the very first funeral I ever went to was for a friend of mine. She passed away at the age of 40, cardio arrhythmia. I was asked to give the eulogy. I'd never been to a funeral in my whole life, and I have to give the eulogy. So that was an experience, but it went well. And I asked the family about it, and they said, just get up there and talk honestly. And so I told some silly, funny stories and things about us, but I felt that I captured her, and her family actually asked me if I'd send them a written copy of the eulogy. So I guess I said the right things. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Joyce, I would you'd love to be my student. That's so sweet of you to say, Joyce. Well, I take that with honor. I do. Thank you. And Sydney, me too, Joyce. Well, thank you both. Oh, Drops of Jupiter. I miss seeing your name on here, and I love your name, by the way. Did I ever meet Robert Redford? What a quality starring human being. No, I never met him. Well, Robert Redford was not much of the Hollywood scene. He lived in Utah. He didn't want to be here. Smart man. He didn't want to be corrupted by it. He was much happier living in the mountains of Utah. But I have spoken to people who encountered him and heard lovely things about Robert Redford. Very classy, a classy gentleman, a real gentleman. That's how I heard him put to me. And Whimsy and I were talking about Robert Redford a couple of weeks on the show. And I just said, well, my favorite movie of his is The Way We Were, because I'm a big Streisand fan. I can watch that movie over and over and over. And Whimsy just said, oh my God, I love The Way We Were. And Whimsy said, that movie is every Jewish girl's fantasy. She said, oh my God, every Jewish girl fantasized about being Barbara Streisand and getting Robert Redford. I thought that was so cute when she said that. And in many ways, that was the fantasy of The Way We Were, part of the secret. I think a lot of women, and probably some men too, frankly, lived vicariously through Barbara Streisand. But, the fact that she could land this seemingly perfect man. In fact, that was one of the flaws of the original script, why Robert Redford turned it down. He hated the fact that Hubble Gardner was too damn perfect. And he said, you've got to make him more flawed. I want him to have flaws, faults. I want him real. And it was only after they punched up the script and changed it quite a bit that he finally consented to doing it. And Barbara Streisand fought so hard to get him. They were throwing around some other names like Ryan O'Neal and I forgot who else, but she knew that Redford was it was going to be magic, the teaming. And as I said on Wednesday's show, it was a case of where you had two really opposite actors. Barbara Streisand, Robert Redford, comes to mind, two total opposites. And it was a lot like, closest thing I can compare it to is Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart in The African Queen. Again, two total opposites. And their chemistry was scintillating. There was something about those polarities coming together and those opposites being magnetic. Well, that's what you got in The Way We Were with Redford and Streisand. And I've talked about it on here before because I told about how on the 4K release of the Blu-ray, which came out for the 50th anniversary of the movie, Streisand, at her own insistence, wanted a scene restored because many people complained the movie never made sense. Why did they break up? They were so in love. And of course, the reason was it was during the McCarthy era, Hollywood, in the era of the blacklisting. And Katie's character had been this outspoken communist in college in the 30s. And that was going to destroy his career. And they had to break up. And there's this 2-minute scene that explains that. And it was cut for time. And Streisand was heartbroken and was cut. And she actually went to the editor, actually picked up the film off the cutting room floor and said, can I keep this? Streisand kept it in her vault for all these years. And when it came time for the 50th anniversary, she said, please, 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 can we put the scene back in? And Streisand talked about it in her autobiography. She said they dropped in the scene and she said it just fit like it had always supposed to be there. And then she said, well, because it was always supposed to be there. And so it's wonderful to see that on there. And then the movie really comes together and the movie is much more poignant at the end. The big scene at the end in front of the Plaza Hotel in the 50s when they reunite and he's got a new woman in his life. And of course, Streisand says, your girl is lovely, Hubble, and brushes her bangs aside. And then in the background, she starts singing the theme to The Way We Were. But it's so much more heartbreaking, I think, because of those 2 minutes being put back. But no, in short, I did not get to meet Robert Redford, and I would have loved to have met him. What was this? I had a dream about Brittany Murphy. I dreamed that I told her I loved her, and then she said, I'm sorry. And then you woke up and then you found out the next day she died. You were probably having a psychic, like an intuitive thing. When we're dreaming, we're in that alpha state. We're really receptive to that kind of information. So that might be what you were picking up on. Let's see. Any other comments here? Yeah. Oh, Joyce, you're going to the oral surgeon. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything will be okay for you. Well, I got to back up some comments here. I'm so sorry. Let me back up. I apologize. I was reading too far along here. Let's see. People saying hello to each other. Jim mentioning Joe Girard on Rhoda. Yeah, Andy, that Stan Laurel's funeral was attended by a lot of stars. I've seen newsreel footage of that. He died extremely beloved. In fact, 5 years before he died, he was presented with an honorary Oscar. And Stan always said how very much he wished that Oliver had been alive, because they both would have been awarded honorary Oscars. And when Oliver died, his funeral and burial place was a lot more modest. That was in the period in the 50s, before they had a renaissance and they were rediscovered. But in subsequent years, there's a fan group called the Sons of the Desert. And at considerable expense, they commissioned a beautiful, large plaque to be mounted onto a wall behind his grave to kind of make up for the modesty of his grave. This beautiful plaque, honoring him as one of the greats of comedy. And then, of course, Stan Laurel is buried over in Burbank, Forest Lawn. I've been to his grave a few times. Was Joyce, Al looked for Chuck's live stream for about 40 minutes and you never got a notification. Well, Joyce, you know what the problem was? As I explained earlier, I didn't come on here until, God, almost 6:30 or so. What time did I come on? I had, I do intuitive readings for people, and I had an emergency situation with a woman. She very much needed a reading, and I knew I was going to cut into the time for this, but I had to give that to her. And I figured, well, I'll come on here. I at least come on for a little bit, and I come on here. I want you to know, all of you, I come on here out of respect to you, because you, through thick and thin, you always come here for me. And so even if I'm atrociously late, I do my best to be here even for a little bit. Like now, this is going to be a shorter show. Well, no, I'm looking right here at 7:50. I've been on quite a while. I'm going to wrap this up soon. Gotta eat my dinner. But anyway, thank you for coming on, even though there wasn't a notification or anything, and it was so late. And of course, Anastasia's not doing her show tonight either. And as I said at the beginning of the show, she sent me a text apologizing to all of you. And I know she appreciates every one of you as well for coming through for her. As I tell you, I appreciate that very much, because she's a very dear friend of mine, and it means a lot to me that you've come and support her. Really. Well, some people got notifications, but I was still atrociously late today. Oh, Andy would have loved to have met Dee Wallace. Oh my gosh. Well, I got you there. I used to take acting classes with Dee Wallace. I know Dee very well. I've even stayed over at her home. And when that was, she wanted to do a workshop intensive, a weekend workshop. And she wanted to make it affordable for all of her students. And to rent a facility would have cost so much. Dee Wallace is such a generous, gracious woman. She allowed us to use her home and bring sleeping bags and like sleep on her living room floor. And she had some of her rooms that we could stay in and that type of thing. But I think it was like 30 people in her house. And I can't speak more highly of Dee Wallace. Lovely, spiritual, giving woman, fabulous acting teacher. And also, I might add, a good life teacher, a life coach, because Dee always said that acting is just a metaphor for life itself. So it's about understanding yourself, understanding your own life before you can ever play somebody else. And also, a big misconception people have about acting is that you're faking. Now you're playing, you're faking, you're pretending. No, Dee's whole technique was no, you're playing an aspect of what's in your soul. You're bringing your own truth to the situation. And Dee always taught us you can never lie to the camera. Ever, 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 ever. Because she said people subconsciously know if you're not being truthful. The camera is like a microscope. It picks up your aura. It picks like what's in your eyes, your facial expressions. And we used to tape our scenes after we do them. And Dee was able to point it out to us. She'd say, look at that moment there. She'd freeze the tape. This is back in the days of videotape. She'd freeze the tape and go, look at that. You weren't being truthful there. Look at that. She'd point it out again and again. I didn't believe you there. And she trained us always, always be in your truth, be in your soul when you're playing a scene. I could do a whole show on Dee Wallace. I love that woman very much. I respect her greatly. Where's some other comments here? Yeah, Dee Wallace from E.T. Oh, and she had some cute pictures around her house, herself with the E.T. puppet and Spielberg, and sometimes she'd tell us stories about the making of it and about Drew Barrymore, and she was a little girl. And there was one story, I think Drew Barrymore was about 6 years old at the time. And there was one day, it was during a break, they caught her talking to the E.T. puppet, interacting with it. And Spielberg, because he always wanted that honesty on camera, that reality, he paid the people who operated the E.T. puppet, and I think there were times there was even some little person inside the costume, or there were people working it through animatronics and voicing it. He had them do that even when they weren't filming. He kept the E.T. puppet alive specifically for Drew Barrymore, so she would believe he was real, because he wanted that on camera, that little girl really believing E.T. was real. And that worked. And of course, I think Drew Barrymore in latter years goes, oh, come on. I knew it was just a puppet. I was a puppet. And I think Dee was on her show or something. He said, Dee corrected her and said, no, you believed. You knew that puppet was real. You believed it. So that was sweet. I remember, oh yeah, Cujo also. In fact, I remember one time there was going to be a screening of E.T. and Dee was going to be there for a question and answer. And I couldn't make it. I couldn't go. And I was talking to my sister on the phone and I joked about it. And I said, well, I don't need to go to that. I can just get Dee Wallace on the phone. I can put on my DVD of E.T. and go, now, Dee, tell me what was going on in this scene right here. In this scene, I could have probably done that. Of course, Dee might have gotten a little annoyed with me, but she would have probably done that for me. She's very sweet. Oh, and I remember my sister wanted Dee to autograph her E.T. DVD. And so the joke was, well, I've got my E.T. DVD autographed by Dee. And I said, doesn't that sound like Morse code? And Dee thought that was funny. Let's see. Oh, Joyce. Okay, now we're getting a comment. I went to the dentist today. X-rays confirmed Whimsy's reading. Oh, Joyce, I'm so, having gone through it myself, I once went through about $2,000 worth of dental work, and it was so much work they had spread it out over 4 weeks. And I initially said, well, can't we do it all at once? And the dentist and the hygienist just looked at me like, you don't want to do all that to your mouth. One day, trust us, You don't want to do all that dental work at once. And I quickly found out after the first visit why they spread it out over 4 weeks. Well, Joyce, I hope and pray you'll be okay. I'm sorry about that. Where's some other comments here? No, Joyce, you got to go to the oral surgeon next. Oh, God. If I go back to the dentist soon, I'm probably going to find out some similar news. I don't know. Have you ever heard anybody say, I can't wait to go to the dentist today. Oh, this is going to be fun. No, it's almost always something. Even a teeth cleaning. Though I will admit, I once had to get a filling. It was an emergency filling. I was back east in Virginia visiting, and I had a big filling drop out of my mouth, and I had to get it fixed. And the dentist gave me what is sometimes known as laughing gas, nitrous oxide. Woo! I was just laying back there going, drill my teeth. This feels good. Let's see, where's some other comments here? Because I've got to wrap it up soon. Yeah, old people talking about the dentist and nitrous oxide and so forth. Yeah, it would be cool if I could get Dee on here. I don't know. She's a very busy woman, and she still works, still makes movies. So I don't know if she'd have time or not. Impossible. Impossible. Suddenly I remember giggling a lot after getting wisdom teeth pulled. Oh, you're reminding me I had to have one of my wisdom teeth pulled. I think it was during that horrible month, that month of dental pageantry. And oh yeah, you know something else I remember about that? I did one of those laser teeth whitenings. I thought my reasoning was if I'm getting all of this horrible, horrible work done, wisdom teeth being pulled, and fillings and stuff, I want something fun, something to look forward to on my very last visit. So I said, on the last visit, can we include this, the laser teeth whitening? And do you know that was the worst of all the procedures? I mean, and I had some painful stuff done. If any of you have ever been to the dentist and had a laser teeth whitening thing, they have to put this device in your mouth. They have your mouth like wired, I won't say wired open, but propped open for something like, I don't know if it's literally as long, it felt like 2 hours. My jaw was hurting. It was aching so bad. And you have to wear these goggles because there's this overhead ultraviolet light. So you got the goggles on, you got your mouth propped open, and then they start painting the chemicals on your teeth. And they leave it for a few minutes, and then they paint on more and more. And then I noticed my gums and my teeth started getting so sensitive, and my jaw was hurting, and my eyes hurt from all that light. And I'm laying there. And I thought, this is by far the worst of all the procedures. And I thought it was going to be fun. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. Let's see, Henry Arson, what happened to Henry Thomas, played Elliot. He still acts from time to time. I think he's around 50 years old now, but I have seen him pop up once in a while. Probably Drew Barrymore is the most visible now because of her television show. I don't know if anything's ever going to come of this, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Christopher Radko, the famous designer of Christmas ornaments. He commissioned me a few months ago to design a Kelly Clarkson, not Drew Barrymore. Duh. I got my blonde talk show hoax mixed up. But anyway, it wasn't Drew Barrymore. Pardon me. I shouldn't have started the story, but he had me design a Kelly Clarkson ornament. Now, I don't know if it's ever going to see the light of the day. I have my doubts it's going to come out this year if it comes out at all, but I did do that, but no, it was not a Drew Barrymore ornament. Let's see, where's some other comments here? People are calling smart teeth, wisdom teeth, smart teeth. But yeah, I don't look forward to going to the dentist again. I know I need to. And Joyce, I wish you so well. And I tell you what, it's after 8. I haven't had my dinner yet, but I wanted to give you all some kind of show today. And because it is out of my loyalty to you. Thank you for showing up. I forgot to turn around my Hollywood pillow here. So I'm going to wind this down. I will be on Dr. Whimsy Anderson's show tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, Oracle of Whimsy. We call it Taco Tuesdays. And then Thursday, I will be on there as well. And it's very different from what you see here because we talk about a lot of current events and we do live on the air readings. And I've always enjoyed doing it with her. I love working with Whimsy. I worked with her for real here in Los Angeles in the health industry. And we just take our friendship and bring it to the airwaves. And it's been bringing me some commissions for art and readings. And I love doing it. I have to be on my toes when I do her show because I have to, as horrible as the news is, I have to spend time studying. I'm going to have to do that tonight and keeping up with everything that's going on so I can talk about it with at least a little bit of authority and not look like a deer in the headlights. And we never know where it's going to go. And I know some of you on here come from that show. And I thank you for following me here. Was this? I'm looking at the comments here. Chuck, be positive. Act as if. Okay. And Jim, so glad to be with all of you tonight. Thank you all very, very much. And I'll be here next week, hopefully closer to 5 p.m. Pacific, if work doesn't get in my way. And I'll be doing the 2 shows with Whimsy on Tuesday and Thursday. And I send you my love and I send you my gratitude. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.